Welcome to yet another video. Today, I'm basically going to show you how I plan the semester. So granted, I don't know anything. I recognize that I don't know anything, but this is how I plan right now. I know it's going to evolve, but I feel like for now it's a good strategy that works for me. Today's our last teacher workday before we start school. We start the next semester tomorrow. So with that being said, I'm going to show you how I planned out the semester with the standards, goals, etc. Let's get into it. So the first class that I want to talk about is English 2. I teach English 1 and 2, both on level, and English 2 is an EOC course, like an end of course exam. So that's a state test, and so I have to prepare my English 2 students for the end of course exam. My English 1 students don't have an EOC, so I can teach them whatever the standards state, but I'm going to start first with the English 2 class. Okay, so what I did was I looked at a sample end of course exam. I wrote down just in non-academic language what I want my students to be able to accomplish based on that sample EOC. So there were lots of poems, so basically I want my students to be able to analyze and identify different literary devices in a poem. There was lots of vocabulary questions, synonyms for words they needed to know, a variety of vocabulary. Literary devices were very popular, so I want my students to be able to identify literary devices in a work of literature, poem, essay, nonfiction work, etc. Theme was super big that I saw. What a theme is, how to identify a theme in a work, and understanding the impact of themes and the use of literary devices. And these are all goals that I have created based off of looking at the sample EOC. Structure was also big, how a piece is organized. So examples would be chronologically, flashbacks, time jumps, told in narratives, etc. Tone and attitude, and then more theme. So once I created those goals, I took a look at the state standards and I listed standards for each of those goals. So we've got poetry, vocabulary, same as the goals, right? Literary devices, text structure, and then I listed different standards to fit each of those. So once I did that, I created a list of fiction, nonfiction, and poems, different works to read with the student. The state that I work in does not have requirements for the books that we have to read, so I can complete the standards and goals with any books that I want, which is super awesome. So Night by Elie Wiesel was a fiction work that I wanted to read, and then right under the work I wrote the goals that it would accomplish, right? So Night would help my students gain perspective about a historical event. It's a longer work of fiction. They would understand how the longer work of fiction is organized, how it works for the audience. Monster by Walter Maier. This book. I wanted to read this with my students. It's a fiction book, but it's written through a movie script, which is super cool. That goes along with how it works for the audience, purpose, and author intent, gaining perspective, blah, blah, blah. Honor by Thierry Emmergard was the last fiction work that I hypothetically wanted to read. It is a historical nonfiction, and the book is super awesome. If you haven't read it, I would totally read it. There were lots of themes here, lots of different vocabulary, so I think I'm going to read this one first with my students. And then I went to nonfiction, obviously did not finish the purpose behind each book. Still not sure which nonfiction work I'm going to read, but I'm thinking about The Hidden Life of Trees. I actually have a gigantic binder called Poetry, and this is just, it's different poems that I have annotated and poems that I hypothetically want to read with my students. So I'm probably just going to pull from this whatever poems stick with the themes of the fiction and nonfiction works we read. That's probably what I'll pull. That way we can compare and contrast with different works. So once I created that goals sheet, I wanted to create a semester-long calendar. So I have a key at the top for myself, I guess. Now that I've already had a semester of teaching, I have a somewhat better grasp than I did before of how long things take. So we've got first day of class, the second day we're going over the syllabus, assigned seats, and we're giving them a pre-test to see what they know. The next day I'm introducing independent reading, and then we're analyzing a short story together. The first unit is short stories, and it will officially, formally start the second week of school. And so I pretty much take each day and I go through the goals that are in this other document, and I determine how long it's going to take and what unit I want to put them in. So in Unit 1, we are learning about a variety of literary devices. That way we can implement that knowledge of literary devices into later units, right? So in Unit 1, we're learning about different literary devices. We are learning about theme, how the author organizes a piece of work. So all of the concepts that I want to have my students learn and apply with longer works, I'm going to start with those short stories. And that's what I did last semester, and it turned out really well. I feel like my students got a pretty good grasp of everything. When I took a look at my school calendar and I combined the two, so the 16th is Martin Luther King Day, meaning we don't have school, so I'm obviously not going to plan anything for that day. And since this is English 2, we're going over EOC quizzes. I put those in on days. I added in when they're going to have essays due. Okay, I moved my chair down, but literally making a physical calendar really helps me because I'm teaching 4 different classes over the course of the semester. It helps me like keep all of them separate. Going briefly over the English 2 calendar. January, we are going over rules and expectations, how to work in a like how to be a student in a classroom. And then we're going over basic English tasks. So what literary devices are, how to identify those literary devices, how to read a short story, and how to analyze a short story. So all of the basic tasks of a person who is fluent in academic English, that's what we're working on. So that's January. And then at the end of January, we are beginning our novel. And I think we're gonna start with our fiction work, and I think we're gonna read Honor. We'll read chapter 1, we'll learn how to identify the beginning elements of plot, how to analyze characters, and that will continue throughout all of February. So February will be reading the fiction work, learning vocabulary, having our vocab quizzes, short essay practice, comparing and contrasting Honor to different works, so maybe short essays, things like that. And then we're about halfway through February, we're talking about theme. More vocab, comparing Honor to poems, and then their final essay will be due at the end of February. That's when I am anticipating being able to finish the book. So at the beginning of March, we will start our nonfiction unit. There's lots of group discussions here. What I'm seeing in March is lots of comparing and contrasting the nonfiction work to fiction works to poetry. Because I don't have time for a unit dedicated to poetry with my EOC class, I am teaching the students how to read and analyze a poem in January, and then scattering poems that the students can compare and contrast their longer works to throughout the semester. Whether or not that will work, I'm not sure yet, but that's what we're doing. And then we're gonna start this bad boy, which I know it looks long, but it's written in a movie script fashion, so it's really not that bad, and I'm anticipating us to be able to finish it in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month. So we're starting that halfway through February. We're continuing the learning of vocabulary, we're continuing literary devices, character dissection, things like that. And then we've got spring break, and then after spring break in the middle of March, we are starting Night, which is another historical nonfiction longer work. We'll do the same things with Night. We will analyze characters, look at plot, look at theme dissection, create Venn diagrams to compare and contrast Night to other works. And then by May, we'll have our EOC in the beginning of May. I'm not sure when yet, so I haven't filled out all of May, but that's pretty much the calendar for English 2. Now that I've done that for English 2, I do that for the rest of the classes that I'm teaching. So what I'm teaching this semester is English 1, English 2, journalism, and yearbook. I run the yearbook for the school that I'm working at. So that's how I plan for the semester. And now I'm going to make since tomorrow's the first day of school, I'm gonna make my PowerPoints for the first day of school, and I'm gonna print off my syllabi and just get ready. So let's do it.